The meaning of letting go: emptiness, compassion, equanimity, freedom, and desirelessness. Beginning with emptiness. We meditate to reflect and calm our minds and to deepen our understanding of who we are. This is not a conventional understanding of fact, but existential intelligence, saturating us with experiences of what it is to be alive. Consider what impermanence is, and then move it from concept to experience. You don't have to look very far. We notice our world around us is always changing, and so we have a concept, but it is transformative when we experience it. And that is life. Just reflect on your broken heart, sudden loss of a job, the unexpected death of a relationship or, an actual person. The reason I use these types of examples is because Buddha said it so eloquently. Happiness is possible when we are attached to things that are unchanging. Misery results when we're attached to temporal and transient things, and they change. In this world, the only thing that is constant is change. The target is emptiness. This is a challenging concept because of what it is not than what it is. It is ambiguous, to say the least, and misunderstood, for sure. It is not the elimination of a sense of self or personality. This has to do with our relationship with self. We are like a forest, a highly dynamic biological, mental, and spiritual organism, a complex of many events that are shifting constantly. And with that, what are we? What is constant and what is changing? Where are you in the middle of all this? We are all aware of our individuality and uniqueness. We extrapolate and exaggerate this into something we continue to explore day by day. But in that self-absorption, we cut ourselves off from the rest of the world, and that separates us from our awareness and feeling of interconnectivity. Yet when the attention of others is drawn to our individuality, that sense of separation can make us feel alone and self-conscious. Public speaking, for example. This is the extent to which we feel the gravity of I. Emptiness dissolves that sense of separation, but it is less intense than our feelings of individuality. Because it is sublime and our feeling unique and special usually seeks intense means to do so. So that's why the illusion of self is so strong and pervasive, because emptiness and what it means is subtle in its ambiguity. Where is this sense of self we have a sense of? When you next experience that sense of individuality, pay attention to that feeling and see if you can locate your self, to which that sense of self can be reduced. The question remains, where am I? You are non-local. You're not anywhere. It's only within a confined set of biological and mental processes that you appear to be at all. Basically, the body's just a reference point. And being still, we are not here. This is key to understanding emptiness. There is a liberation of mind through emptiness. It is not a place, but a state of being, of freedom, from egos, selves, objects, beliefs, possessorship. It is to walk lightly in the world. This is what I meant by you don't have to buy the roses to enjoy the fragrance. You can enjoy the world without getting wrapped around its axle. You can be intimate with a situation, taking what you need, but not leave a trace that you were there. You move on. Emptiness isn't something as much to understand as it is a way to be. Like joy, like play, definitely like love. It's about who you are. Emptiness is actually the environment in which our true capacities come forth. We can become empty and yet have a highly individuated personality. And that's the paradox. Those who express emptiness aren't flat, but distinctive in their personalities. Emptiness is about stopping fixations and relinquishing options. a state of being, of letting go. In a meditative space, we acknowledge our sense of self, but we let it come and we let it go. We let it flow so that we may flow. We do not hold on to it. This is about creating space in which the self-feelings of constrictions can't remain forever. About being open. Space isn't a thing but absence of obstruction or constriction. It's about liberation. Nothing stands in our way. What hinders us gradually is removed or floats away. Otherwise, our hopes, dreams, and desires and limitations entrap us. Our investments in who we are may give us a temporary sense of importance, but they block us from moving creatively through life. With some small success, we build upon that brand, and then we are concerned about our image, what they call optics. To abide in emptiness is to abide in an open space of awareness, a letting go of opinions. Therefore, it is dangerous to convention while also easy to misunderstand. It's not about nihilism, but letting go of things that hold us back. We need an understanding of how everything is related, not separate bits and pieces, but interconnected. We need to be aware of how we are one, and within the constancy of change and evolution. Many forms of meditation pay attention to breath. Breathing is our primary relationship to the world. This is one way in which we're not cut off from our environment. Our breath supports many things going on at any given second, from our personal biology to our social interactions and causal relationships based on our choices. Things move from simple to the complex very quickly from there. This is what defines our uniqueness. The many things that you interacted with to become you are different from what I experienced in becoming me. But this is how our senses of self come to be, by just breathing. Self is therefore an ongoing story we tell ourselves with our own narratives. This is how we project onto the world aspects of ourselves in order to see it in some meaningful way. We are the central character in an unknown play with the supporting cast of thousands, right? It's a process, supported and reinforced by predictable outcomes, our script. But the future remains open. We never know how the story is really going to unfold. It's just a set of probabilities, all vying to be chosen. We try and hold on to specific moments, but like a river, they flow past us, despite our attempts to grab hold of water. Except that you're always in flux, never one thing more than a second, though defined as a distinctive personality. Emptiness is the middle way, because it avoids the extremes of non-interaction and overindulgence. You don't hold on to existence or try to be non-existent. Emptiness is therefore deliberately elusive and resists definition. You can't pin down that which is ambiguous. So learn to make friends with it. It's a doorway. The frame of the door and the door itself have value based on the materials used and their size. But the door's utility comes from what is not there, a passage. The harder we try and look at something, the more difficult it is to nail down. In our dual-mindedness, we want to be able to say that something is this or that because then we can categorize it for later use. But it's like when you wake up at night and you go to the bathroom. As you walk, you notice how you can see things better from the corner of your eye rather than looking directly at them. Similarly, the question of who are you is hard to know directly, but easier by inference, including saying what you are not. We can go on forever trying to come up with a concrete answer, especially in response to an ambiguous question. But when with some ambiguity allows you some wiggle room to color in the gaps according to your whim, experience, and understanding. Emptiness is therefore not empty, but a process of ever deepening to see subtle things which were invisible yesterday. Infinite in a sense of depth below the surface of the obvious. If we take any instance of our lives and dig deep, we reveal something that is mysterious. Experiencing the infinity of spirit doesn't lead to discomfort, but to rest and ease, feeling one with the universe. This is also paradoxical, as emptiness on the surface doesn't look warm and fuzzy, but in the end, it does bring peace. We create the issues we all have to deal with because of a sense of self and importance. Within emptiness, we don't need to take life so seriously. Everything is changing anyway. I mean, how much of what we're doing is going to be important in 100 years? Empires come and empires go, and they always have and they always will. This can only be known by living, not from simply studying. If you want to learn to swim, you have to get wet. Compassion. We're simultaneously by ourselves, living in our own heads and living also with a bunch of other people. Our operational centers are within our minds where things are given meaning. When we talk about our experiences with each other, those things are colored by our own inner worlds, but we have a need to share our worlds with others. We're both solitary and social. The inner world is where meaning and understanding emerge. The outer world is where love and compassion are expressed. Meditation merges the two, and meditation is one of the most selfless acts of love we can commit in service to others. Raise one, and everyone else is raised. The notion of self assists us in an unpredictable world, but it is a self-defense reaction to the pain of the world, the pain of living. The experience of emptiness has an emotional component. The constrictions of self fade into a fabric of relationships and interconnection. We open ourselves to an unpredictable world of empathy and compassion. Love. Even in the darkest night, a momentary flash of lightning from outside instantly and momentarily lights your way, and then all is dark again. We all have our moments. We see how things are in a flash, and then return our attention to the world and its concerns. Love is something that comes to us. We can't plan for it. You may use an itinerary to visit a place, but you can't plan on who you'll meet or your reaction to them or theirs to you. Many a marriage has this story. Someone went to a friend's home and met someone else who was waiting for the roommate to arrive for their date. For some crazy reason, the roommate never arrived. So the visitor and jilted date pass time together, maybe go get a pizza so the evening isn't a total loss, and the next thing you know, you're getting an invitation to go to their marriage. I've heard that story enough times that I suspect it's a synchronicity. It pays to be open to spontaneity. Equanimity. People compartmentalize others into friend, foe, and strangers. When you begin a new job or your first day of class in a new school, you focus your attention on sizing others up. Who is an ally, an enemy, or irrelevant? We begin to categorize right away, and we keep asking, what can you do for me? We seek to control and constrict our lives to keep all the variables manageable, but we don't see people in their own right when we do this. Equanimity says there is a real person just like us behind our projections of who we think they are, each with their own relationships, history, hopes, desires, and fears, each with their own lives. They probably didn't wake up in the morning thinking of how they could frustrate you. Equanimity positions you to see them more as you than not you, and you reflect on your own interconnectivity. When you have a joyous or stressing event with someone, seeing them in this way removes you from the equation, and you see that they're the way they are not because of you. So don't take it personally. If they are a jerk, they were already, and if they are nice, chances are they were last week and this morning too. So much of what is going on is simply circumstantial. See beyond your own personal investment in every relationship in order to see those involved outside terms involving yourself. Everyone has a life that is just as important to them as yours is to you. You're just among the supporting cast of thousands, as I mentioned, in their play, in which they are the central character. Empathy is usually constrained within the range of things you value or identify with. Those you do not identify with, you feel less empathy for, like a dirty beggar who looks scary, a person you just can't imagine being like, and so it's really hard to feel a connection. It's because we cannot imagine ourselves in that same place as them. And similarly with those who engage in criminal behavior, removing yourself from the equation expands your field of empathy. This becomes existential and experiential whenever you open yourself up to the pain and suffering of the world, but sometimes it can be a bit much. Watching the evening news, for example, does have its limits. You see the world and everyone in it through your experiences with relationships. These are your filters. We really do see each other across universes. When you respond to another's pain, you don't first think to do so because it is morally right. You just react. But imposed moralities get in the way of compassion. The difference between doing good because you should or because people are watching versus you didn't have time to think about it. When you do good spontaneously, but then in a few seconds start patting yourself on the back, thinking about who is watching, wondering how to take credit for it, then that's the problem. Ego wishes to take credit for doing good while self-centeredness is self-justifying, never seeing it as responsible for anything bad. Revising history even, to be the victim and never the perpetrator. You can see how quickly we slide toward narcissism. We need to respond to the question that life presents to us. And beyond that comes the responsibility. Solitary meditation may then move to an engagement with the world. Meditation is good, but no one simply becomes more loving to others without interacting with them. Freedom. Anything that leads to more freedom and less constriction, the better. Liberating others is a good guiding light of decision and leadership. Highly limiting thoughts are very self-oriented. What's in it for me? Freedom from restriction versus freedom to specific actions. And from the Tao Te Ching, one of my favorite passages regarding leadership is, true leaders are hardly known to their followers. Next after them are the leaders the people know and admire. After them, those they fear, and after them, those they despise. To give no trust is to get no trust. When the work's done right with no fuss or boasting, ordinary people say, "Oh, we did it." Lead from behind. Desirelessness. Do what you love because you love it, and winning will take care of itself. When you're present, you're inside the moment. In a place where time stands still, you don't change. You stop identifying with the parts of you that do. You simply observe what's going on, but without judgment. You don't use your memory to tell you what you know, but your intuition. You know what you need to know when you need to know it, and afterward, you just let it go. You understand by getting the whole download and then opening its patterns and processes which say everything about it. Here's an example. A computer can download a 2-hour movie as ones and zeros in a few seconds. In that jumble of binary language, all the story is there. The hero's journey and the formula for which makes a good story. The inspiring potential to change people's lives and win international awards. But we need a media player to translate that 2-minute download into a 2-hour movie that we can understand. That's how we process information here in that linear fashion. Now imagine absorbing all that at once as receiving the entire experience. That's because where there is no time, there's only now. On the other side, this is how we take in information. You don't have to ask someone what they think or how they feel about something. You just look at them and you know. At the beginning of time and at its end, quantum physics says there are two particles that are entangled. Across a universe of unimaginable distance and incomprehensible time, they affect each other, meaning that between them, there can be no past and future, only the present. So time is an illusion. And truly, that's the only period of time in which we can live and act. You can plan to do something tomorrow, but you can only do it when it passes from the future, from the world of the possible to the now, the world of the manifest. It's a consideration that changes your sense of passing time. Other reference points in life also change. Staying in that observer mode of non-judging, non-grasping, you're naturally detached without effort. You feel fewer desires because they are associated with change and stimulation, things you feel less drawn to in favor of the sublime. It's not about wrestling with your ego, your lower nature, or anything else. It's about letting go. And that is about sitting in that timeless place, not holding on to anything. Letting anything that comes pass around you and through you. Not chasing anything and not running away from anything. Just observing, not reaching, because none of it is you. All of these flows have always been here, undulating as waves through the multiverse. Sometimes they are taken in and used as tools for achieving ends written into someone's destiny, but that's all they are. Impersonal tools in the trade of incarnating to experience whatever plane or reality we're focused on at that moment. Here and now, you are within all the probability waves, and your number of choices are manifold. By choosing, you collapse one of the possibilities and move in the desired direction. Or you can stay in a state of potential, which feels like a very powerful place because it is. Your will is free until it acts. Then it will surf the causal wave it sets in motion, and that is where karma begins. It is with intention that we do anything. An opportunity presents itself to us in life, and from this our desires wake up and want to explore it. A job opportunity, potential mate, possible answer to a big question, and so on. Once that fire is kindled within us, we begin moving heaven and earth to achieve that goal. And that intention is what creates new karma, planting seeds that will grow into things we need to account for, whether good or bad. If we can't account for them in this life, then we will in another. And this is what forms the circles of the world, the links and the chains, either of iron or gold, which bind us here. But if we can act without desire or intention, that is the closest we come to generating the least karma, not seeing ourselves as the doer, but maybe more as a facilitator. And you can see the humility that's built into that, especially when we do good. And this is the middle path. This is where the razor's edge broadens into a road you can easily walk on because your focus becomes so fine. The higher planes are sublime and sometimes ambiguous, and the physical plane is known for its intensity and definition. And like a drug, we love loud music, spicy foods, strong drink, wild sex, power over others, wealth beyond measure, fame and glory, and not to get caught and punished when we commit crimes. Until we can perceive, then prefer the subtle over the intense. How can we deepen and stay within the higher planes? Why would we want to? David Byrne of Talking Heads was right. Heaven is a place where nothing ever happens. Integration and coping. Here we see life through the filters we want. On the other side, we see life through the filters we need. Everyone who shares their near-death experience says how tailor-made, how individualized it was, right down to the most secret and subtle of meaningful personal details. I imagine it's the same for the broader population who have their own spiritually transformative experiences through meditation or an enlightening epiphany. If you look at the outer life of someone, would a spiritually transformative experience appear to be a huge, unexpected quantum jump from their inner life or the next most natural next step in their evolution? If they haven't done anything good or bad to find themselves in the outer circumstances the world calls a predicament, then the jump isn't perhaps so much the result of a pull from having done something right or wrong, as it is a push to get them to where they need to be. Our realization is how powerful thoughts are. After such an experience, being unable to work distractedly as you did before, what they call multitasking, this single-mindedness sometimes becomes a hindrance, but it's an advantage. Your thoughts bear more fruit in the outer world, even when you don't appear to be directly involved. And this is also part of being present. Being present, you naturally become who you are there on the other side. Every day, you're a little bit more that person. And after that, you're drawn more and more into being that person. If not, it is because you're trying to be like everyone else. Whenever we push down our uniqueness because other people disapprove, we are less and less living the lives we are supposed to live. We're living theirs. Growing up in the South and in the 1960s, life was all about conformity and nonconformity. When I pestered my parents with questions about God, they sent me down the road to the local church. The next Sunday morning, I put on my suit and I walked past a few houses to the church, ready with all my questions. I sat in the pew and saw the minister up on the stage talking to a team of helpers and obviously too busy preparing a sermon to deal with me. Looking up at the clock counting down to the service, I oriented myself by watching him, his body language and demeanor, looking at the crowd around me and getting a general sense of what it was like to be in church. My issue with most sermons is that for a kid, and I was 12 years old, open your heart means nothing. Conceptually, I had no idea what that meant or how to do it. To know you want God but to be given the way in gibberish causes only frustration. And add to that the impression that it makes on a child to be called a sinner who will burn in hell unless he unlocks the gibberish, and you have a usual message every Sunday in the South in the 60s. Somehow the grown-ups took solace in this, making me wonder all the more what was wrong with me. Anyway, I sat through the service, and at its end I was ready to jump up and walk over to Reverend Coolidge. But everyone in the church was suddenly in line ahead of me, ready to shake his hand, invite him to lunch or dinner, gain some counsel, or just get a blessing. If I thought he was too busy before the service, there was absolutely no chance of speaking to him now. I left and went home, determined to figure out a way to talk to him next week. Next Sunday came, and again I went to church. I thought to sit where I could get to the preacher at the end of his service more quickly and nearer the front of the long line of people. But now we had a new preacher, going through the same preparations as last week. I looked at the woman sitting next to me in the pew and asked where Reverend Coolidge was, and she said primly, "Oh, we got rid of him." I asked why, and she informed me that he did the unthinkable and married his daughter to a black man. To her, that explained everything. So I could now end the conversation and just look straight ahead, which she would simply interpret as shock born of righteous indignation. I was probably thinking, if I reveal that I don't understand, the crazy people are going to kill me. If I was confused before, I was totally flabbergasted now. As I said, this was the South in the 1960s, so it's not a guess as to what the predominant racial attitudes were. But it made no sense to me. Even then, I knew that spirituality shouldn't care about such things, and yet here were such judgments flooding the church, the only go-to back then. In this desert of no spirituality, the one trickle I hoped to find dried up right there. I didn't even hear the sermon, and I couldn't leave before it ended because I realized I was stuck in the middle of the pew. Best to lay low and run home at first chance. Then I could ask my mom to help me sort it out. I never went back to that church. My mother confirmed that Reverend Coolidge had indeed married his daughter to a black man. Reverend Coolidge himself was Cherokee, full-blooded. His younger daughter, Rita, was soaring in her music career, and her slightly older sister, Priscilla, was also a rising star. Reverend Coolidge married Priscilla to Booker T. Jones of Booker T. and the MGs, who was a legendary musical talent. It was natural that two such people might meet and fall in love. And I understood that. Yet the only thing anyone saw was color. Having been raised in this time and place, I also understood the prevailing sentiment of the congregation. But as a 12-year-old in a racist, authoritarian culture, it mattered little what I thought, in that there were no answers as to why it had to be that way. This is when I began to intuit the greater importance of understanding over answers. The ability to articulate it this succinctly would not occur to me for almost half a century. Now, after my NDE, I understand that God was saying he was glad I wanted to know him. But if I walked the ways of man, religion, I would come out with more questions than I went in with. But if I walked with him, spirituality, he would tailor my experiences, and where answers might fail, understanding would be given. A simple indicator of this was driven home in my confusion in trying to understand the sermons, which I've mentioned. Simply put, most things said in the church did not provide me with any actionable intelligence. The congregation, who had surely made sacrifices in their lives to know God as they saw it, had also made enemies and friends along that journey, and they were now kicking out their minister for no worse a crime than marrying his daughter to a man of a different skin color. And that is apparently the lesson I went to church to learn. For it's the only one which presented itself, and that is this. Being present in the impossible now, standing inside the eternity of a single moment. Being present is like becoming a blank slate or a still reflective pond. If you look at something, it exists as a reflection in you. And when you look away, it doesn't. Some spiritually transformative experiences don't result in bringing back superpowers. Maybe the experiencers come back with nothing more than a super connection. The average person is interested in what you saw and what psychic powers you now have. But fewer ask, what did you learn? How have you changed? There are things you can't share because people will think you're crazy because the experience is so personal. Sometimes the most natural answer to some of these questions is so abstract as to be meaningless to the uninitiated. Whether we're present or distracted, the difference is in how you process information. Present, you process information non-linearly, taking into the count the whole enchilada in a single moment. Trying to apply a non-linear perception to a linear world that deals with time has surprising drawbacks. You aren't taking in information as usual, and you don't process it normally either. You perceive patterns instead of steps, and intuit their relationships and meaning all at once. Being present can be a challenge to your relationships with people who don't understand. Sometimes you have to go find your truth in places where the world says, there be dragons. Answers and understanding are both important, but we are neither the answer nor the understanding. We are the question, and that's why we search. Once we are present, we're the whole thing, the question, the answer, and the awakening in between. When you are present, time stops, and you are in observer mode, not judging, not reacting. Sometimes the worldly part of you is working through something as the real you calmly watches without reaction. You're at peace. A couple of things to note. 1, single-minded attention narrows your focus like a laser and expands the now towards infinity. That gives your thoughts a lot more power. You see them manifesting with less effort, and you see more synchronicities. 2, being present makes it hard to process information linearly. For example, when present, don't try watching a movie because as its scenes sequentially deliver the story step by step, one scene after another, you'll find it impossible to keep track. You're like an amnesiac watching a movie one frame at a time, forgetting what has just happened and unable to predict what frame to come. It's the same thing if you're giving a talk. You either have to have prepared notes or you just have to wing it and go on your intuition. You can't play strategy games on your phone when you wake up in the middle of the night because you can't remember what you just did or plan your next move. So that's what it's like to be present, just being in the now. The impossible now. In the in-between was the impossible now. It was impossible because of its incredibly short duration and its infinite width across universes. By design and how you fit within it, you're forced to be present, as in that moment present. Inside it, there is no past and no future, but an infinite expanse across universes. And this is why it's easy to get lost within it and experience difficulty even thinking or talking. There is just knowing and being still. Einstein's equation E=mc² essentially states that we, as matter, as we approach the speed of light, our mass approaches infinity, and distance approaches zero, and so does time. Meaning, if and when we transition from matter to light, we're everywhere there is to be, and in an instant. And this is the reason a single moment in the in-between can be a week here. Max Planck, the father of quantum physics, was actually born before the Civil War, which makes the whole idea of quantum physics even more amazing. He believed in a non-personal God, as in, he is our natural state. Planck time, where quantum phenomena are observed, is in the impossible now, the in-between, measured as 10 to the minus 44 seconds, or 100 millionth of a trillionth of a trillionth of a trillionth of a second. That's a pretty short time. In that single moment, of the in-between. You know you are light because things you see representing life here appear at a standstill. Either it's because there, as light, no time passes, as it does not for light, or you move so fast as light that it's like working on your car engine while it is running, because at the speed of light, you could take the whole thing apart and put it back together again between piston strokes. In a state of that stillness, a stillness where we aren't collapsing one of the infinite number of probabilities or waves into a present, we become light. The more still we are in that impossible now between what comes next and what is turning to dust, the more we reside in a state of pure potential and come closer to this powerfully unmanifest aspect, the closer we are to the highest unmanifest God. In that suspended, unexpressed state of all unequal probabilities, we are every place there is to be, and in every time there is to be. We are one with all there is.